Okay.
Hello, Culture Matters Podcast. Buckle up. This is going to be a rare treat. I have multiple quotes based on my Chinese food last night. Luck will follow you in the coming year. P.F. Chang's.
Like
Here's
that.
another one before I introduce our guest. What was lost will soon be found. P.F. Chang's. Quote, you will soon be recognized for your unique talents. P.F. Chang's. And here's another one. The day is near when you share your talent with the world. P.F. Chang's. This is freaking awesome. Before I introduce you to our guest, this is the Culture Matters Podcast. I'm excited to tell you that our guest today, per our last episode, 807, I believe, they speculated about every 180 episodes they present us with their personhood. And it's about true. Yeah, they've actually been around since season 12. I wrote it down. Episode 144, season 17, episode 194, season 20, episode 232, episode 20, season 24, episode 280, season 37, episode 432, season 50, episode 595, season 7, season 68, episode 807. Today will be released episode 939 on the Culture Matters podcast. If you haven't listened to those episodes after this one, get your ass over there, get it together, start listening to the show because we got Scott Rutkay back on the Culture Matters podcast. Leader, friend, entrepreneur, soon to be published author, thinker, and it's great to have you.
Jay, that's a hell of a. I can't bring that level of energy at any point in this conversation, but I'll try to get as close as I can.
What are the odds, Scott, that I'm eating Chinese food last night and it would tell us our collective fate?
I mean, based on what you're saying, 100% chance, because that's what you're
I mean, you
describing.
told me before we hit record that you are about to be published. I mean, let me just read these quotes again. The day is near when you share your talent with the world. Check. Luck will follow you in the coming year. Check. It better. You
Better.
will soon be recognized for your unique talents. Check. What was lost will soon be found.
Well, it's great. It's great seeing you. Great episode, and we'll talk next time around 1102.
I was I was I was listening to the last episode 807 of the Culture Matters podcast, and boy, was that a riot. It's almost like I don't have any fun doing the show until you come on.
Well, I mean, I think part of what makes me effective, in almost every facet of my life, be it family, friends, business, is I am blessed with a giant smile on my face in good times or bad. So great when things are going great, try to have a serious conversation with me. I also have a giant smile on my face. So, I think that, you know, I, I really try very hard not to end the day with a frown. And I know that, I mean, I'm not the first person to ever say that before, but it really is important to me. You're on this rock once, and it's important to me that you enjoy what you do, how you do it, and who you do it with.
Why?
Why? Not one of the things I have to share that is free is sort of, you know, how I engage with the people that I'm around. So when for example, a month ago, a week ago, 3 weeks ago, when you said, "Hey Scott, do you want to do another podcast?" I remember doing the ones previous. I remember how much fun we have, right? And that makes me want to prepare for what we're going to do, be ready for a conversation that will be different than other conversations I have today. And, sort of put my best effort into whatever I'm doing. And I find that I do it best when I'm enjoying what that is. I say no a lot, right? I tell my daughter, I have a 14-year-old daughter soon turning 15 next week. I
Wow, that's
tell her
great.
a lot. The best part about being an adult and wait until you get there is the ability to say the word no. That's it. That is what separates me from her is that she can't say no to me. I can say no to her. Tons of repercussions, right? I have to deal with what that no means, but I do have the ability to pick and choose what I do, who I spend time with, and where I put my energy. I think that's super important, and that makes me happy. And I
Hmm.
hope that it makes the people around me happy.
What happens when we can't say no? We
Yeah,
don't have the courage.
yeah.
Where, there's
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the easiest thing to spot is you're forced to make bad decisions. If you can't say no, well, I've said this before. You'll have to check which episode it was, but I've said that sort of, you know, the mistake that a lot of people make is thinking that their idea is the best in the room, right? If that's how I felt, if I felt that I had the best idea and no one could say no to me, how do we ever figure out if I'm right? We're always doing what I say. We're always doing, so not being able to say no can force you to go against your best interests or the best interests of whatever's happening in an organization, the best interests of an organization.
how do we figure out who? By the way, that's episode 232. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. How do we figure out? Well, I would say results. However, what didn't Napoleon say something about history is written by the people that win?
I mean,
Is that
that that
Napoleon?
that sort of echoes that the all of the history books are written by the winners. I mean, it's right. So we're saying the same thing, right? There is no, to your point, you would think that over time you would figure out that that I was wrong all those times, right? But what happens in a business where people can't say no? The second thing is talented people leave. So you're held accountable not only by the people that are there, right? But you're held accountable by the people who'd leave and say, this Scott guy, he was crazy. He said nutty things. He said, do all your work upside down and write, in invisible ink that no one can read. That sounded nuts to us. Um, that's the risk of people who can't say it. Just sort of in a small. I mean, there's 1,000 different things I could talk about.
I love that though, but we have two markers, right? To how do we audit our decisions? That's a helpful theme.
Yeah.
How do we audit our decisions?
So
Is it something we do solipsistically, or that's like a little
I to sort of
we
bring it
can't
down
do it
to
ourselves. We
earth
need
a
other
little
people.
bit. I think about this a lot because one thing that I struggle with. I'm lucky and unlucky in the business that I'm in that it's very paper heavy, even in 2025. So we have physical people in the office with frequency because we're receiving a lot of documents. And we have to parse through those documents, send them every which way. So my industry hasn't figured out a way to be 100% um, digital. So what does that mean? That means that I can operate an office that's collaborative because the people are around me. I have team members that are not here, right? And I find that it's less effective for me to collaborate with them because they're not here. I can't touch them. I can't feel them. They can't walk into my office all day long and say, "Hey, Scott, take a look at this. Hey, Scott, what would you do here?" And I'd say, "Hey, Paul, what would you do here?" Right? It's not as easy. It's a little bit clunkier, right? Still doable. We're still effective, but you have to be more thoughtful about how that's done. So, how do you assess, right? How do you assess if things are working or not working when you're working sort of in a very variable, very fluid environment?
I
right? So
want to highlight that. If anyone's listened to this show, anybody out there, episode 938, Carly Foreman Cohen, amazing nonprofit leader. Her father, one of my greatest mentors, he says management by walking around.
yeah. So
And
I
you
think that
speak
that
about
is
this on the show with
hundred
frequency.
100%. I think, and this is a very unpopular sort of subject now, or it's an unpopular sort of idea to have. I like having as many people around me as possible. I surround myself with smart people that I want access to almost as instantly as an idea pops in my head. I'm a frustrating leader in that as you're answering a question, I'm asking another because your answer is firing off something completely different in my head. It might seem like those
Wait,
two
but if I
topics
surround myself with smart people, how can I take the credit for their ideas?
well, I mean, right, right. That is the pitfall. That is the pitfall. I learned a long time ago that I can't spend credit. I spend money. So I don't worry about the credit. That I don't worry about. Yeah, I mean, look, this is maybe it's because it's insurance that the ego is a little smaller on this side of the camera, but I don't necessarily worry about where the good ideas come from. Um, I'd love them all to come from my mouth. I'm smart enough to know that they don't always it doesn't always
What's
happen that way.
what value actually comes from having smart, capable, high integrity people?
Yeah. I mean, I would ask for the smaller list of what's negative about having those people. Maybe not all of them pay the bill at lunch. I mean, there is no negative to having smart people around you. There is never a negative to having talent around you. There is never now, if you are concerned,
What about my feelings?
right, if you're concerned about feelings, and look, I mine are fragile also. I get it. It does, I like to be right. I fight passionately when I think I am, but I also understand when I'm not and can move on quickly when we're moving in a different direction.
I want things to go my way because this is who I am. This is all I have. I am Culture Matters. So
So
my identity
so
is
so you say
so
that, right?
connected to this idea that if there's any ideas outside of my idea, there might be a physiological response of closeness or I don't like the way that sounds. I may
Yeah.
not give the smart people around me the opportunity to serve me. Now, I want them to serve me through serving the organization. I think that, I say that.
Look, I think that
These are always interesting episodes. Yeah, let's
you're
follow this. Yeah. Is this, I'm not sure if the audience is as familiar as satire as you
no,
are, but you've
no.
recommended some good books to me in the past. But um, oh, for the audience's sake here, I think part of mm, my I want to say leadership, but also maturity is rising through that impulse.
Yeah. I, I, obviously work is an extension of, how I work is how I live, right? I don't come into work, put on a hat, and I'm a different person, right? I'm the same person, you know, sort of philosophically when I walk out these doors. Um, so I sort of those are the guiding principles of, if you think I walk out of here and I have a serious face, I do not. I talk about, I think about, I say the same things that I say here in the office, in a work setting. So yeah, look, I think the mistake is thinking, that people need to serve me. There's no me. Like I don't like that's not how that doesn't help me, right? That's not the relationship I have with the people who are here working with me.
How do you balance? How do you counterbalance the ego
Yeah, I mean,
with?
yeah, it's that is look, that's a challenge, right? Because I have experience. At this point, I have wisdom. I've been, I've been here for a long time. So it's difficult when you hear something that is new and might seem as though it's never been done before. I might have the experience that it has. I've been doing this, in one way or another since 2003. That's 22 years of we've never seen this before. And history proves that while history might not repeat itself, it sure does rhyme, right? That you see these cycles come and go. It's difficult not to say the way we did it in '07 was the way we should do it now. That's a foolish answer, right? We have a completely different set of tools and resources to get things done now than we had in the past. So listen, be open to anything and be honest enough to say, hey, I don't think that's going to work, and here's why. You know, as it turns out, we tried something like this. This is what we found. Let's look out for this.
Here's why I don't want to have all the answers. I'm not strong enough to hold up all the responsibility on my own.
Well, I
My
mean, look, so
It's
so
too much
yeah.
responsibility. It's too much energy. It's like a mathematical equation that it's gonna, the math doesn't math. I can't take it all on my shoulders. I want to have people that are bought in, that are enthusiastic, that are more capable. Now, what did Schopenhauer say? You can will what you want. You can't want what you want.
Want what you want.
Maybe that's not the quote exactly. I can want something, but going from wanting to behavioral can be
Sure. Sure.
a whole life's
So
journey, a whole educational process, a
but
whole.
also, you understand that what is best for you today might not be best for you 6 months from now, a year. What makes a great employee today might not be what makes a team leader tomorrow. You don't know, right? And so we do, you could do study upon study upon study in hiring somebody. And the reality is, in a 30-minute conversation, you're going to figure out if you can work with that person. And over the course of a week, you're going to figure out if they fit you culturally and can do the job. That's it. That's how long it takes. Now, the question is, are you willing to have the 30-minute conversation and figure out if you can work with them for real? And then are you able to act on that? And then the second thing is after that week of figuring out that that person can't do the job, do you make the very difficult decision that is most best for the company and say, unfortunately, this isn't working out?
But what you just broke down, this is amazing. Willing to have it, the qualifier, that takes the ability to respond, that takes self-sacrifice, that takes investment of energy, it takes responsibility. Willing to, I think you said act. I wrote willing.
Willing to act on that. So after the first 30-minute conversation, if I feel like we can't work here, why are we having another conversation after? Why are we continuing it? Why would I engage in thinking about hiring you? Look, I need an employee, right? I need a team member in the worst way. I interview you, Jay, and in that 30 minutes, I'm like, this guy isn't going to work here. I hire you. What sort of domino effect have I started by not understanding the first conversation, not understanding you're not going to fit? I can tell that immediately. So
This
why
is
would
great. Okay, yes, yes. Keep going, keep going.
so then, right, the first week, you work there the first week. I'm going to know in that first week whether or not you fit in and you can do the job at hand. Then what? If I keep you when knowing that you can't, then I've made the mistake. You haven't made the mistake. I'm not going to be able to educate, bring up get that person to the right level in the amount of time that if I'd just been thoughtful from the beginning, had the 30-minute conversation, understood that we could work together, understood in the first week that you could do the job. This isn't, look, I wasn't born knowing how to do
This
this.
is why this is really important. Well, you just broke down, I think, eloquently in three phases. Have the, interview, act on it. Let's say, I don't want to say react. I want to say relate to circumstances, like decide, cut off.
Right.
You just summed up management in three prongs. Management, like the whole field of management. That's what I would argue. And that is not, if I'm the best insert whatever plumber. What is a plumber? Someone that knows how to navigate through all those what materials and
Right.
the different
Plumbers do a
homes and
job that nobody wants to do to fix a problem that
or
nobody
well, let's
wants to
use
fix.
title.
Right.
Uh, you can break that down in four minutes. What the what and the why and the how of that service that creates value for the stakeholders. Okay. That use of intellect, that use of and then the experience that compounds with the wisdom that you're talking about, that creates value of the in that domain. But what you just broke down is a different business management, and because humans, like, we're all on a spectrum of yeah uh, our genetic capacities, our environmental circumstances that shaped our values. We have different personalities, how we go about doing things. Management is its own business that has to be learned. And just because I could be the top 1% of the 1% in plumbing or culture, but mm, my experience, my knowledge, my wisdom in management might be like I'm not even in freshman year. I'm like in kindergarten.
Yeah, for
But I
sure.
have I'm a senior in college. I'm writing my
Right.
dissertation on plumbing. And
Well, you find that in sales, right? You find that the best salespeople don't necessarily make the best sales managers. Why? Because while they're speaking the same language, perhaps their interests aren't necessarily aligned, or the conversations are slightly different, right? It's just managing, what makes the best salespeople that you've ever met in your life are all unique individuals that don't necessarily share all the attributes of the next best salesperson you ever met, of something selling something completely different. So, what does that mean? Does that mean you can't teach someone to be a great salesperson? No, of course you can. But what makes them the best is something that might not necessarily be teachable. That's sort of that X factor. It's sort of the stuff that makes them the
you bring
special
up a good
person.
point here, and that's why I think I'd like to get your thoughts on this. And maybe there's elucidation we can pursue as it relates to some of the things that Dr. Peterson was articulating at the American Gift Conference. I think that person that is considered the best at that domain, they have to continue doing that to model the values that attract whatever percentage of human beings that would resonate with that. That like behavior,
Yeah,
yeah, uh, responsibility is modeled. We've talked about this before. Accountability is given in speech or taken in action. You outlined that when you said the willing to have the to decide is how I took it. Like, can you make the tough decision?
right,
Accountability is a symptom of responsibility. It's not a prerequisite to
right.
responsibility. It's a symptom of responsibility. So the point I was making was, and I want your opinion on this. Um, it's important for that whoever those that are considered the best to continue continue modeling what the best is. And there's a friction
Yep.
in growth where actually I was having a pretty deep conversation yesterday with um our all maybe I won't say who it's not like a bad thing, but I with somebody I respect, an advisor of mine, about a case study around engineers from college, or the engineers. It's an engineering company, and what was the case study? It was as it was growing, more and more people went up the chain, and they weren't engineers of the engineering company. They didn't have a background in engineering.
Right, right, right.
That starts to create bureaucracy. So there's less modeling through action and interaction, and more dialogue
Right.
from concepts. And so
So
then now
that,
we're less doing and we're more talking. Like,
right.
and that man, and the question becomes, how do you solve that? And I think, well, it's multifaceted, but it could become as simple as, are we, I think it's paying attention to the customer.
Well, it's more importantly, it's paying attention to who you need to pay attention to. Because
I like that.
that philosophy doesn't necessarily have to only apply to a customer, right? I mean, you want to act that way for in life, right? You want to keep on getting more knowledgeable so the people who rely on you for knowledge can properly rely on you forever. So,
Okay, I want to say we're in agreement.
yeah,
Uh, I love what you're saying. Paying attention to who you're be paying attention
right,
for. That would so think of that as I agree with that. The customer piece is that it's like the teleology, the purpose,
right.
like the organizational purpose, customer. Uh,
So,
like that's
yes.
like the narrative, the milieu, the atmosphere. What you're speaking to is like hierarchy. Pay attention to who you have to and what you have to pay attention to. Is that what you?
So if I take the train exam, the engineer, in my head, there's a joke I said to somebody a long time ago who said he was an engineer, and I said somebody's got to run the trains, and he was very offended by that statement. So
Yeah,
every
that's
time I hear engineer, I go to trains immediately in my head. I know we're not talking about that.
no, it's hilarious. You're an asshole.
But yes, that's not, those are two separate statements. That's hilarious, and I'm an asshole. So
Somebody's
if you
got to
take
run.
the engineer sort of what you're talking about, right? As less and less people up the chain become engineers, think of the arrogance of managing people in a role that you have no idea what they're doing, right? So I was lucky enough to get into this business from the bottom and learn every job it takes. I can manage each group of people, each team that we have here, because I know how to do the things they're doing. Now, do I know, 2025 integration from a searcher into my LOS, all the rules attached to that? Maybe not.
This is where something important comes in behaviorally. This is where the importance of questions and inquiry comes in. Humility.
Right.
Because if you are in a position of authority hierarchically to someone that you've not done what they've done, I would argue that the most effective way to communicate with them would be through inquiry. And in the process of that inquiry, you will learn a hell of a lot.
You have to it is your job to learn a hell of a lot, right? So where it becomes inefficient is where you choose not to, where you know better. So this speaks to the question you asked
Ooh,
originally, which
ooh,
is
yes, that does
right,
speak to it. Yes.
right. So that
And the
right. So
opening
I
paragraph, the
get there.
maps of meaning.
I meander, but I get there.
No, this
So
is good. Yeah.
so it brings back the question that you're asking, right? Is that how do you get rid like how do you tamp down your ego and ask the question, hey, I don't know how this works. Are you doing this right? Are you doing this right? Can we do this better? What are we doing that could be? Because by the way, my experience could be somewhere completely different, and I could add in what I do. There's a reason I have the job.
You don't tamp down your ego. This is the point. Nature does.
Well, right, right, right. I hear what you're saying.
Some listen, nature does. Nature is there's we're it's not in a vacuum. In a free market, it's not a vacuum. Everyone can't lie.
Everyone can't lie. Correct.
Without dire consequences. This is maybe why, you know, the West won the war. You know, that's what we like to hope. Oh yeah, that's the reason. Well, it's not in a vacuum. Where I'm going with this is nature. This is the opening. I love this. When I had the opportunity to talk to the doctor, I said, "Hey, this opening sentence. I actually have maps of meaning right here. This is a summary of this entire textbook. I've been studying this book for a while, for 8 years, maybe 7 years. You know, this summarizes the whole textbook. Something we cannot see protects us from something we do not understand. The thing we cannot see is culture. In it, forget. I'll leave some of the words out. It's a little abstract. Um, the thing we do not understand, and is the chaos that gave rise to culture. If the structure of culture is disrupted, chaos returns. So the structure of culture will inevitably be disrupted with growth.
With anything, with anything,
Everything.
anything that affects change is chaos. Anything. New people, new door. You move into a new office, move into a new home. Kids stub their toe. Everything introduces chaos to the culture.
We will do anything to protect ourselves against that return. We don't want to do anything. This is where leadership comes in. The question is, what is leadership?
Right.
You know, well, there's different forms like that, but I would say true, open communication.
Well, I mean, sort of at its base, what you're talking about, leadership could be defined as hope. I'm you're looking to me to lead because you are scared, you're afraid, you don't want this chaos. What do I provide as a leader? The way out for the chaos to stop, for the chaos to end. Right? So it's hope. That's what a leader is. That's why do people come to work here for me, with me? They hope that my idea gets them what they're looking for, which is economic fortune.
Okay, that's good. So and this is actually argued uh in this maps textbook that hope is it's tied to the dopamine that's released in our brains when we have a goal.
Correct.
And when we voice our goal, now we're signaling to our culture, our community, to the people. It's another level of commitment. Our behaviors have to live up to that explication, that communication.
Well, I mean, think about one of sort of a back of a postcard advice for work. Half the job is just showing up. So what what is more of a vote of confidence by your team members than them coming to work the next day? Because by the way, if it wasn't a place, right, where they wanted to be, half of it is just, hi, I'm here to do it.
It's absolutely crucial, I think, that the like when those at the highest of the hierarchy are not suffering, everyone else will. Meaning the suffering doesn't transmute into meaning.
Right, right, right,
It stays suffering.
right.
So, um, and there will be suffering. It's it's
Sure.
like a trade-off. Things aren't going to go right. The market's going to shift. Things are going to get harder. What is entrepreneurship? It's taking on risk.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
it's one willing to take on risk. But what's risk? Risk would be, what is it really? Possibility to lose something deeper than just shelter and food, reputation.
station, station. It's
Station is I think I was just reading this in The Master and His Emissary. We had the opportunity to have Dr. McGilchrist, freaking polymath, amazing on the show this week, past week. Uh, and he talked about in the book, The Master and His Emissary, that it's not actually even the money that like the amount of capital that people produce that leads to lasting happiness. It's their social connectedness, the social relationships. So where I'm going with this is the data on this is either if once you get to a certain level of being able to have food and shelter and the essentials, there's this social dynamic that's so important to our identity and our nature. This is where I'm going. When one takes on risk, this is the stress of the entrepreneur. I want to say the entrepreneur is in a position, a fulcrum of stress, a precipice of anxiety, and how they relate to that anxiety is revealed in how they relate. It's revealed in how they relate to others, how they relate to their future self, how they relate to their past. It's a tremendous responsibility, burden, because to take on the risk is the risk that I'll lose my, not only the capital, my name.
right.
And so what I'm saying, like in the defense of all that are listening, that are still listening, that are entrepreneurs, it's a bet of like your whole identity, your whole what interconnectedness in the community, and anxiety. This we can talk about solutions here. Anxiety um can lead us to make the worst decisions. Can lead us to make it can be harder and harder to see straight. That's where
Yeah.
that's where teams come in. That's where mentors come in. That's where
So,
fun conversations like this.
so
uh,
you in the beginning of this conversation, you asked me what happens if you can't say the word no. What you are describing is what happens if you can't say the word no.
this is really amazing opportunity to integrity, right? Like, what is the word integrity? What does that even mean? I'm gonna look it up. I don't. Let's see here. Integrity. What's the definition of integrity? The quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness, probity, rectitude, honor, ethics. See, I would argue the reason that we have core values in companies, they're heuristics or short form reminders to help us orient back to integrity when we fall away from it as individuals as a consequence to the natural anxieties that come with um business, life, things, striving. Like that's the value of the values, is to help us. Now, so anyway, like the definition: morality, righteousness, morals, virtue, truthfulness, sincerity, honor, trustworthiness. If we look at the state of being whole and undivided, unity, unification, wholeness, coherence, cohesion. Um, well, Scott, I'm looking forward to season 8900 of the Culture Matters podcast.
Perfect. I'll be here.
Um, any final thoughts? I was gonna, I have some, I could read some things. I have notes here.
Yeah, tell me something. I mean, like, we could chew on something for a minute or two. Why not?
I have a story that I've been chewing on the last few days. It's because I was interviewing McGilchrist, and it was a 2 week. It was right after Dr. Peterson, which was 10 months of preparation. Um, that I we had McGilchrist in the queue to come on. Now McGilchrist is written. If you haven't heard of The Master and His Emissary, it's a profound book published in 2009. It's an academic book that has over 200,000 copies sold. It is it's a profound book. Changed people's lives. I have taken an interest into it because of my working thesis with entrepreneurship. And we had an interesting dialogue at the end of the show around that very concept. Um, that he's not a business minded person, according to him. So he found that interesting. But and if anyone's interested to listen to the show, The Matter with Things is like a 1,700 375 page 2 volume book that this polymath put together. He's an unbelievable philosopher, psychiatrist, neuroscientist. So that's what we're talking. Dr. Ian McGilchrist, and I think that Peterson looks up to him in many ways, and they consider one another contemporaries. And anyone interested, McGilchrist is going to have a lecture, a course on Peterson Academy, I believe, in the future. So, but in the on page 14 of The Master and His Emissary, there's this interesting story that he attributes to Friedrich Nietzsche of all people that I think is a lot of deeply analogous to my liar lid journey. That if you listen to the show, you're not too familiar with it, but it's in 30 Days of Thought, and I'm going to start talking more about some of the unpublished stuff on the show, so people can get up to speed. But here it is. There is a story in Nietzsche that goes something like this. There was once a wise spiritual master who was the ruler of a small but prosperous domain, and who was known for his selfless devotion to his people. As his people flourished and grew in number, the bounds of this small domain spread, and with it the need to trust implicitly the emissaries he sent to ensure the safety of its ever more distant parts. It was not just that it was impossible for him personally to order all that needed to be dealt with, as he wisely saw. He needed to keep his distance from and remain ignorant of such concerns. And so he nurtured and trained carefully his emissaries in order that they could be trusted. Eventually, however, his cleverest and most ambitious vizier, the one he most trusted to do his work, began to see himself as the master and used his position to advance his own wealth and influence. He saw his master's temperance and forbearance as weakness, not wisdom. And on his missions on the master's behalf, adopted his mantle as his own. The emissary became contemptuous of his master, and so it came about that the master was usurped, the people were duped, the domain became a tyranny, and eventually it collapsed in ruins. The meaning of this story is as old as humanity and resonates far from the sphere of political history. I believe, in fact, that it helps us understand something taking place inside ourselves, inside our very brains, and played out in the cultural history of the West, particularly over the last 500 years or so. Why I believe so forms the subject of this book. I hold that, like the master and his emissary in the story, though the cerebral hemispheres should cooperate, they have for some time been in a state of conflict. The subsequent battles between them are recorded in the history of philosophy and played out in the seismic shifts that characterize the history of Western culture. At present, the domain, our civilization, finds itself in the hands of the vizier, who, however gifted, is effectively an ambitious regional bureaucrat with his own interests at heart. Meanwhile, the master, the one whose wisdom gave the people peace and security, is led away in chains. The master is betrayed by his emissary.
All right, start it up again. We're doing another one.
Share this with a friend, and we'll see you next time on the Culture Matters Podcast.